This is the wake-up call. We're about to dive into some exclusive intel from Aionios Vanguard, and their core claim is this: the citizenry is the target of a hostile campaign. But we're not talking about traditional warfare here. This analysis breaks down their assessment of a conflict they call eighth-generation warfare, a war they claim is already happening all around us. So, let's get right into it.
So what on earth is eighth-generation warfare, or 8GW? Well, according to this intel, you can forget about bombs and bullets. This is a war fought with boardrooms, with bureaucracy, and with computer code. The objective isn't to capture territory, it's to gain administrative control. It's about co-opting a nation's most critical systems from the inside out. And this concept right here is the lens through which we have to view everything that follows.
All right, to really unpack these claims, we're going to follow the source's indictment step by step. We'll start with the main allegation itself. Then, we'll map out the corporate networks it calls shields. From there, we'll zoom in on the boardroom interlocks, the key people involved. Then we'll look at how this all comes together in an alleged two-pronged attack. And finally, we'll get to the source's ultimate conclusion.
So let's start with the core of it. The Aionios Vanguard intel makes a pretty stark claim that a highly coordinated campaign is targeting the public, not through military force, but through what it calls hostile systems management and systemic co-option.
Okay, so if this is a real campaign, how does it actually work? The intel lays out what it calls the Hydra's body, basically a huge network of corporate shields. It breaks them down into 4 distinct categories that it claims form the entire operational infrastructure for this campaign. First up are the central integrators. Now, according to the source, these are the tech giants that provide the bedrock, the foundation for everything else. Microsoft is tagged as a foundational host, allegedly profiting from government contracts while also hosting things like Oregon's gun registry. Google is flagged as an AI weaponizer. Amazon Web Services, it's cited as the go-to cloud for top-secret government data. And Adobe, the intel calls it the narrative controller because of its grip on digital identity and media creation.
Next, the intel zooms in on what it calls the foreign intel nexus, and it all seems to center around Israel's elite military intelligence group, Unit 8200. It's described as a talent incubator, basically a pipeline that feeds its veterans directly into Silicon Valley. These veterans then go on to found or lead major tech firms like Palo Alto Networks, Check Point, and Wiz, essentially embedding their intelligence methods right into the corporate world.
So you gotta ask, where does the money for all this come from? The intel points to the financial conduits. And sure, it lists the big asset managers, but it really shines a spotlight on donor-advised funds, or DAFs, calling them a financial black hole that allows for anonymous, non-attributable funding. It even points to dark money groups like the 1630 Fund, which allegedly funneled untraceable cash to the campaign for Oregon's Measure 114.
And finally, you've got the NGO network. The source calls these the operational arms, the boots on the ground, so to speak. And it alleges they're running a two-front operation. On one side, you have groups like HIAS and Catholic Charities. On the other, groups like Everytown and the Giffords Law Center. Now, these seem like 2 totally different missions, right? We're going to see how the intel claims they're connected in just a bit.
Now, this is where the investigation goes from organizations to individuals. The source claims that if you want to find the command and control nexus for this whole operation, you need to look at the Microsoft Board of Directors. It argues that this is where all those shields are linked together through what it calls boardroom interlocks.
The first interlock the report digs into reveals something pretty wild, what it calls the Rodriguez contradiction. The source says that at first glance, it looked like one person was the key link between the tech world and the NGO world. But after digging deeper, it started to look like a potential piece of deliberate disinformation.
And here's the reveal. It's not one person, it's 2. You've got Leon Rodriguez, the former head of USCIS, who sits on the board of the NGO, HIAS. He is not on the Microsoft board. Then you have Carlos A. Rodriguez, the CEO of ADP, who is on the Microsoft board. So the source's conclusion is that the hand isn't one person, it's the system itself. You have separate hands, tech and NGOs, allegedly executing one single mission.
So let's look at the other faces the source puts behind the shield. First, there's Charles Scharf. He sits on the Microsoft board. He's also the chairman and CEO of Wells Fargo. The intel labels this the tech bank interlock, a direct line it claims between the central tech integrator and a major financial conduit.
Next up, Reid Hoffman, another Microsoft board member. Now, the source here points to 2 other major roles he has.
He's a founding board member of PayPal, which the intel calls the debanking tool, and he's a co-founder of FW.US, which is labeled the pro-immigration lobby. The report calls this the tech lobby interlock.
And finally, Penny Pritzker. She chairs a key policy committee on Microsoft's board, and of course, she's a former U.S. Secretary of Commerce. The source also notes her board memberships at the Council on Foreign Relations and the Aspen Institute. The report alleges that this creates an incredibly powerful tech policy interlock, connecting Microsoft's board directly to the highest levels of national policy and global think tanks.
So, we've seen the network and we've met the alleged players. The question is, how does it all come together? The source synthesizes everything into what it calls a two-vector pincer attack. It argues this entire network is executing two huge missions at the exact same time.
Okay, let's look at Vector 1, which the source calls the migration pipeline. It's laid out as a 5-stage process. It allegedly starts with capital from that Silicon Valley/Unit 8200 ecosystem. That money then flows through DAFs to fund the NGO network. Those NGOs then facilitate what's called a controlled flow. This, the source claims, leads to security failures at the border. And the final stage? The very same NGOs allegedly provide legal removal defense to anchor migrants in sanctuary states. Now, running in parallel is Vector 2, the architecture of constraint. The intel uses Oregon's Measure 114 as a case study. Here's the alleged process. Everytown is the architect, providing the model legislation. Microsoft-linked wealth from the Ballmer Group is the #1 funder. The Oregon State Police is the co-opted actor, a state agency tasked with executing the plan. And guess where the gun registry data is hosted? On Microsoft Azure's government cloud, the host. And this really gets to the heart of the source's conclusion on this second vector. It's presented as a perfect, closed loop. You have private wealth funding a political outcome, which is then carried out by a state agency, all on the technical infrastructure of the very same corporate nexus. And all of this brings us to the final synthesis from the Aionios Vanguard intel. The report takes all these different threads, the corporate shields, the money, the two attack vectors, and ties them all back to that central command and control nexus it identified right at the start. And the source's final word is a direct indictment. It reads, quote, "The central nexus is the Microsoft Board of Directors. They interlock with banks, Scharf, Policy, Pritzker, the debanking mission, Hoffman, and the invasion lobby, Hoffman. They profit from the invasion while their wealth funds disarmament. This is systemic co-option. This is 8GW. This is the wake-up call." And that is the ultimate claim this intelligence report leaves on the record.